Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Hiba and I'm a fourth year medical student studying at the University of Manchester. So I've always been really good at memorizing. I was one of the highest achieving students in both my GCSEs and in my A-levels as well. And while part of it is potentially down to your genetics, I do have some memorization tricks that I keep going back to time and time again every time I have exams. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my secrets to memorizing and expanding my memory really quickly and really easily. These tricks are really going to benefit you if you too are looking for ways on how you can enhance your memory for your exams. These techniques that I'm going to be sharing with you, I've been employing since I did my GCSEs, and even though I now do medicine, these techniques have worked for me to memorize for every single exam that I've taken to get here from my GCSEs till now, regardless of the subject I was revising, and they continue to work for me now that I'm studying medicine. So the first tip is that whenever you're revising, you always want to turn your titles into questions. Whether you're writing long notes or flashcards, or if you prefer to make your notes by hand, or if you prefer to do them online, you can always turn any title that you may need to write into a question. For example, if you're writing a section of notes on the types of trees in the tropical climate, instead of writing the title as the types of trees in the tropical climate, you could turn that into a question and make the title, what are the types of trees in the tropical climate? It sounds like a really small and even useless change, but actually it does make a difference. This small change actually prompts you to start thinking of the answer to the question as soon as you've read it in your notes. It kind of allows your brain to direct you to that information from the get-go, and I find that it really encourages you throughout your revision to really help elicit and draw out that information from your head. Of course, it's not something that's going to work alone, and you need to use it in conjunction with all of the other tips that I'm going to give in this video, but try it out the next time you're writing a set of notes or making flashcards. You literally don't have anything to lose, and you may find that this small change also makes a big difference for you. Tip number 2 is to always read your notes out loud. If I tell you to just take away one tip from this video, it has to be this one. I don't think I could ever have done as well as I have in my exams if I hadn't always read my notes out loud. To be honest, I'd even go as far as saying that if you're not going to read them out loud, then don't even bother reading them at all, because you're highly unlikely to be able to remember anything significant, and you're not really going to retain anything. So you may already know that there are lots of different components to memory. There is long-term memory, short-term memory, sensory memory, semantic memory, and they all store information in different locations and in different ways. Reading something out loud allows you to have the added benefit of being able to record something in your auditory memory as well. Without hearing yourself saying this information as well, or reciting this information that you're trying to remember, you won't be able to store this information by means of two different forms of memory. I understand that it can actually be really difficult at times, and because of my need to kind of revise this way, I've never been able to just go to a public library or another public space to revise my notes. I always have to do it at home because I can't really sit in a public library and be reading out loud. But because the benefit is so substantial, I would never do it any other way. Just try reading your notes out loud, and I'm 100% sure you will see a difference in the amount of information that you're able to retain, because you're now storing this information in an additional store of your memory. The third tip that I always use and always find really helpful is to practice presenting your information to someone, or pretend that you're giving a presentation to someone. All you have to do is, whilst you're revising, pretend you have an audience and that you have to explain the whole subject to them from start to finish. Start by introducing the topic and the subject, and then slowly make sure that you've covered all of the details that you know about this topic that you could possibly give to this other person. I usually also do this whilst having a whiteboard with me, and whilst I'm talking, I'll draw out little diagrams or write things out that will help me present to this other imaginary person. Again, not only do you have the auditory memory component being involved here, because you do need to present out loud to the other person, by doing this you do just really reinforce your memory on these topics. You don't have the information right in front of you, which you would if you were just reading your notes out loud, and by recalling this information from your brain and talking about it through memory, you're really helping to build all of those neuronal synaptic connections in your brain, which are going to allow you to reinforce your understanding and memory of these topics. After you do your presentation, you can go back and see what you've missed and try and include these next time. Also, what I really love about this technique is that you can do it at any place, anytime. So when I was in my second year of medical school, I specifically remember at one point when I had to memorize the process of how a ray of light in the environment actually gets converted into an image that your brain can actually see. It's a really long process with a lot of steps. It involves the environment and the light in the environment, your eyes, the receptors in your eyes, the neurons in your brain, and different locations of your brain as well. So I remember that I was actually practicing presenting it whilst I was in the shower, and I was in the shower for about 20 minutes and I just kept going through that information again and again and practicing that and presenting it to someone. This technique made the process stick so well that honestly the next day I went and actually did present it to all of my class without making a single mistake in the whole process. I remember my whole class just sitting there and clapping after I finished because I went through the whole process without missing a single step in literally almost a single breath, because that's how well I knew it from trying to practice presenting it to someone already. The fourth tip is to actually teach someone the information. This is an excellent way of memorizing any information. It has all of the benefits of pretending to present information to someone. It makes sure you use your auditory memory because you're going to be speaking to that person. It makes you recall that information from memory and build those synaptic connections in your brain. However, it is another step up and it does add a whole other depth to it, because teaching someone information about a certain topic requires you to really understand the facts for yourself. It really tests how much you actually know and remember if you have an external person asking you questions about the topic that you have to answer or asking you for clarification on certain areas, rather than you just going through your book and being like, yep, I know that, yep, I know that, yep, I know that. When you actually in reality don't know the subject to that much depth that you can actually teach them to someone. Teaching really challenges you and compels you to really dig deep into your memory to be able to instill knowledge of that topic or that subject into another person's mind and do that effectively. So teaching people the information you're trying to memorize is really, really going to help. The next tip is try and relate what you're trying to memorize to a certain experience that you've had. This is a really helpful way to try and make things stick in your mind. In many cases, when a specific subject or a question or a topic reminds us of a specific person, a place, or an experience, we tend to remember even the tiniest details about it, and we tend to remember it forever because there is such a strong link between that information and your memory that you have about the information. I understand that it isn't always going to be possible, but if you can, try and relate what you're trying to learn to a specific experience that you had which you don't think you'll forget. I'm sure that you've all had those times when you've been taught something or told something in such a unique way that you just think to yourself in that moment that I'm never going to forget that. For example, whenever I revise the abnormalities of the heart valves, I have this vivid memory of one of my teachers in my earlier years in medical school asking my group what the abnormalities of the heart valves are and what their features are. And one of my colleagues just blurted the answer out straight away, fully confident that he knew it and that he had the right answer. And it was actually wrong. And the way in which that teacher corrected him in that moment, it just still sticks with me. And now I will never forget that specific detail of how that heart valve problem is not related to that specific feature that my colleague gave in his answer. Again, you may not always be able to find an example like this, but if you think of it, you will be able to find a few that you maybe hadn't thought about. And if you can relate what you're trying to memorize to a specific experience, you are just going to be much more likely to remember that information. The last tip in this video is going to be to practice. The tips that I've given in this video, if you use them correctly, they are potentially life-changing and game-changing when it comes to memorization. However, no matter how good the tip is at helping you memorize, it's not going to be any good without practice. We are all human, and inevitably, if we don't go back to things, we will forget them. Now, I'm not saying you should go through your whole syllabus every day before you go to bed, but depending on what your goals are for the memorization and how long you need to remember this information for example, if it's just for one specific exam, make sure that to meet that goal, you are actually going back to that information at regular and spaced out intervals. Without practice and repetition, you're unlikely to be able to commit every single detail into your long-term memory, and you'll find yourself in a situation where you know you knew it, but you just don't know what you knew. Thank you for watching this video, guys. Those were my biggest tips and tricks for memorization that I've been using and successfully using for the past 7 or 8 years. Even if they don't sound like big changes, please give them a try and see how they work for you. Let me know in the comments as well how you get on and if you find that you're being able to memorize things more easily now. If you found this video useful, then please can I ask that you subscribe to my channel and also like this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.